Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. As you can see here, I finally made a monster starter deck for beginners. Now, this deck is also very viable in pro rank, but the reason this is for beginners is because it is made from the starter deck that you receive with a new account. Only this deck has been customized to my liking, and I think it's now good enough to potentially get you to pro rank. So what I did was I made a new account. I started at rank 30 with no scraps next to my name. I quickly did the tutorial, I played a few games, I completed the beginner's page of the rewards book, and with only that, I was able to craft this entire deck, and I only had to make 2 cards. That would be the Oberon King, as well as Gales. Each of them is worth 800 scraps. So I spent 1,600 scraps to make this deck. All of these cards are otherwise given to you in your monster starter deck, or they are given to you in the reward book. So this is my version of a costly pro rank monsters list that you can use to climb from rank 30 and up. I will now show you in absolute detail how it works for somebody who has perhaps never played Gwent before. If you've already played Gwent, just skip to the games and you'll see how fun this deck is for yourself. Alright, so this is a Wild Hunt deck. It works very well with the Frost archetype. Let's start off by looking at our leader ability. White Frost. With this order ability, you will be able to move an enemy unit to the other row, and you will spawn Frost on that row for 2 turns. You can use this leader ability twice. Now, not only will that be able to do 8 points of damage altogether, that's Frost for 1 turn, which is 2 points of damage, Frost for another turn, which is another 2 points of damage to the highest power card on that row. You also have the second part of this leader ability in effect, which says that whenever you play a Wild Hunt unit, you will boost it by 1 if there's Frost on the opposite row. So if you have placed Frost on your opponent's melee row, and you play a Wild Hunt card in your melee row, that Wild Hunt card will boost itself by 1 point. If you played Frost on your opponent's range row, and it's still there, and you play a Wild Hunt card on your range row, your Wild Hunt card will boost itself by 1. So with this deck, whenever you have Frost on your opponent's side of the board, you want to preferably play your Wild Hunt cards on the opposite row. Now, how can you see what's a Wild Hunt card? So let's start by right-clicking on Oberon King, the first card I actually crafted, as it's very important. As you can see, Oberon King has the word Wild Hunt here in the title. That means it's a Wild Hunt card. So this is perhaps the most complex card you'll have in this entire deck, and let me start off by explaining how it works. So when you play this card, it will spawn and play a random bronze Wild Hunt unit. Now, in round 2, this card will transform and will change into the Oberon Invader. So in its second form, on deploy, it will create and play a bronze Wild Hunt unit. So instead of creating a random bronze Wild Hunt unit, you will be able to choose 1 out of 3 options. So this one is a little bit more specific. You'll be able to choose 1 to your liking that perhaps benefits you during the game, whereas in its first option in round 1 will just give you a random card you might not need. So in its third form, in round 3, it will create and play a bronze Wild Hunt unit just like before, and it will also have Veil. Veil is a status you're going to see on many of these cards. Veil is that little purple symbol you see at the bottom of the card. Veil means that you can't get any other statuses on that card. So let's say somebody tries to lock you. They won't be able to because you already have Veil. Let's say somebody tries to poison you. They can't do that because you already have Veil. Let's say you're playing against vampires and they try to give you bleeding. They won't be able to do that because you have Veil. So Veil is quite a nice status to have, and in the third form this card will have it. Another part of the third form is that whenever you play a Wild Hunt unit, it will be boosted by 1 point. So with all the amount of Wild Hunt cards we have in this deck, almost all of them will get a boost by 1 point, which is super cool. So this is what we call an evolving card, and like I said, it's the most complex sort of card you'll probably be facing as a beginner. you get rewarded for holding on to this card. So if you're able to wait until round 3 before you play your Oberon Conqueror, you're gonna get the strongest version of the card. Also, it's important to notice that your Oberon Invader in its second form won't change into the Oberon Conqueror in its third form if you don't have Devotion. Now, the deck I made has Devotion, so it will always change into its third form. Devotion means you only have monster cards in your monster deck. There's a reason I took out a lot of the strong neutral cards you might have gotten in your starter deck, like Geralt Professional, or perhaps Surrender, or even your Lock that you got, which is also a neutral. I took out all of those cards so we could have Devotion instead. The next card we have is Igern. Now, this might not be a Wild Hunt card, but it's one of the coolest cards you can get as a beginner in your Monsters faction. On deploy, Igern will gain armor equal to the number of cards in your hand. As simple as that. So Igern will be 13 points. If you have 6 cards in your hand and you play Igern, Igern will get 6 armor. Now, when all of Igern's armor is destroyed, Igern will destroy itself. So how this works is essentially you want to play it earlier than later because you'll have more cards in your hand and more armor. If you play this card second to last, it will only have 1 armor, and if your opponent can do 1 point of damage, getting rid of the armor, the card will kill itself. Remember, you can never play this card last, because if you play it last, it means you don't have any cards left in your hand, it will have no armor, and it will immediately kill itself. This is a rookie mistake, I'm just warning you beforehand. Either way, this is a nice 13-point card and an amazing way to accumulate points quickly. Now, why do we like Igern? Well, that's because you can sort of use Igern twice. The next card I want to show you is Ozral. Ozral is a necrophage. Not that this matters. You have the option of playing Ozral on your melee row, which will consume a unit from your opponent's graveyard, or you can play it on your range row, meaning you will consume a unit from your graveyard. So after you play a unit and you go into the next round, all your cards go to your graveyard. You can access them merely by clicking on your graveyard on the left side of your screen, just as you can click on the right side of your screen and look at your deck. Now, if we play Igern in round 1 or 2, Igern will go to the graveyard for round 3. Then you play Ozral onto the range row and you consume Igern from your graveyard. So Igern is 13 points. If Ozral eats Igern, it will be 1 point plus 13 points, being 14 points. That's a lot of points. Now, you also have the option of eating something from your opponent's graveyard by playing this on the melee row. Be careful. This is a bit of a pro move, if you will. There will be opportunities where some cards in your opponent's graveyard is more valuable to you, dead, a second time, than it is eating your own card, which is Igern. You will rarely have an opportunity to do this in the lower ranks. Preferably, you always want to use Ozral as your final card in round 3, and you want to eat Igern. Now, what if you maybe didn't actually play Igern in round 1 or 2? What if you accidentally missed Igern? Well, here's another cool card you get in your starter deck, and that's the reason I kept the card to begin with. Old Spear Tip. Old Spear Tip is a 9 provision card. It plays for 9 points, and that's all it does. It's a solid 9 points. It also has Veil, as you can see, so it's protected by, let's say, vampire decks, because it won't be able to get bleeding. If you miss Igern, you can play Spear Tip in round 1 or 2. It will go to the graveyard, and you can eat it with Ozral. So Ozral will play for 9 plus 1, which is 10 points. That's a lot of points in a short round, and it's definitely going to help you. Okay, what is next? Now, let's take a look at the cards that are going to give us Frost. The first card I want to show you that's going to give you Frost is what we call an Echo card. It's called Artgaeth, and it is a Wild Hunt card. Now, Artgaeth is a pretty strong card because it's an Echo card. Now, how an Echo card works is, you get to play it twice, essentially. You can play it once, and it will do its thing, go to your graveyard, but at the start of the next round, it will go back into your deck on top, and you will draw into it. So let's say I play Artgaeth. I will be able to spawn Frost on both enemy rows for 3 turns, meaning each row will have Frost for 3 turns. It will damage the highest enemy unit at the start of every turn of your opponents by 2 points. So altogether it's going to play for 12 points maximum, which is quite a bit. And then Artgaeth is going to go to your graveyard. When you go into the next round, Artgaeth is guaranteed to be the card you draw into first, because it went back into your deck on top, meaning you will draw into it. Now, of course, there are ways that people can get rid of your card from your graveyard. This shouldn't happen too often, but if they do, you won't draw into it. Either way, Artgaeth is a great card. You can use this card in round 1 or round 2, and you're guaranteed to get it back, and you can use it once more in round 2 or 3. So, pretty strong card. You can afford to commit this early on. I have paired this with another card you will get in your reward book, which is the Winter Queen. Now, the Winter Queen is pretty nice. Remember, we have Devotion, so we are going to have Thrive. Thrive means that every time you play a card that is bigger than 4, this card will boost itself by 1. So, if Winter Queen is 6 points and you play a card that's worth 7 points, Winter Queen will boost itself by 1. That isn't what makes this card great. At the end of your turn, if there is Frost on both enemy rows, summon this unit from your deck to the range row. So, let's say you play Artgaeth, there will be Frost on both enemy rows at the same time. This will cause Winter Queen to come out of your deck and go onto the range row. This is a great way of thinning your deck, meaning you're going to have less cards in your deck, and you're guaranteed to draw better cards if you have less cards in your deck. So Winter Queen is a very nice thinning card, and definitely something you never want in your hand. It always has to be in your deck, so you can draw it out with something like Artgaeth. Alright, and then we have another thinning card, but this one is a tutor. A tutor means you can use this to draw a specific card from your deck. Naglfar is another Wild Hunt card. This card will look at 2 random gold cards from your deck, and then you will play one and place the other one on top. So you'll be able to play one of those 2 random gold cards, and the other one will be placed on top of your deck, so you're guaranteed to draw it first in the next round. This is pretty nice. It helps you thin the deck, it helps you draw your gold cards. The next tutor I have, and it's one I specifically crafted, the second card I crafted, is Gales. Gales is also a tutor. Now, what Gales will do is, if you play him on the range row, he will allow you to play a Wild Hunt special card from your deck. Again, this allows us to have access to certain cards, as well as thinning the deck so that you have a better chance of drawing into your good cards later on. So, which Wild Hunt cards do we have that are special cards? There are only 2. So, this will allow us to draw Artgaeth, a Wild Hunt card, or it will allow us to draw Naglfar, another Wild Hunt card. Make sure that when you have Gales, that at least one of those 2 are still in your deck and not in your hand, or else he won't draw anything and it will be a waste of a card. Alright, so how about one of the best Wild Hunt cards in this whole deck? That would be Eredin. So, on deploy, Eredin will spawn Frost on an enemy row of your choosing for 2 turns. If you have Dominance, it will increase the damage dealt by Frost with 1 point. Dominance means you have the biggest card on your side of the board. So, if your opponent's biggest card is 7, your biggest card needs to be 7 or 8. Then you'll have Dominance. Now, Frost does 2 damage a turn, remember? So if Eredin has Dominance, Frost will now do 3 damage a turn, which is incredibly strong, seeing that we have so many Frost archetypes in this deck. Eredin is a card you want to play in a long round, and it will get the most value if you're able to keep Frost on your opponent's side of the board. The next card we have is Nithral. Nithral is also a Wild Hunt card. You want to play this on the melee row early on in the round. Now, every turn, you'll be able to damage an enemy unit by 1 point. Though, if you have Dominance, meaning the biggest card, you'll be able to damage a unit by 2 points instead. So we call this an engine because it's able to do its thing every turn or so, meaning it keeps on giving you points. It's important to keep this card alive. Perhaps you want to boost it with your stratagem. Either way, it will give you 2 points every turn if you have the biggest card on your side of the board. Next up is Adastriga. Now, you might recognize this little card from the first book of the Witcher series, or the first season. This is in fact a girl who's been turned into this Striga, and she will be turned back by Geralt. Anyway, on deploy, this card will damage an enemy unit by 2 points. But if you have the biggest card on your side of the board, it will damage by 4 points instead. So this plays for 9 points. It gives you a little bit of reach, meaning you can go over and kill a card that you find troublesome if it's 4 points or smaller. A nice card to have, one you get in your starter deck, so definitely one you want to keep. Next we have the Aperian Phantom. This is also a Wild Hunt card. You also want to play this early on in the round. It's also an engine because it keeps playing for more points. If you play this in the melee row, you will have the option to damage an enemy unit by 3 points by clicking on this card. Though you never really want to do this early on. Instead, at the end of your turn, if order is not used, boost self by 1 point. So this card will keep on growing by 1 point a turn, and when you're ready to pass and get out of the round, you can then click on this card and use 3 points of damage, and then it will stop ticking by 1 point. So try and hold on to its ability as long as you can. This card is called Parasite. It will damage an enemy unit by 6 points or boost an allied unit by 6 points. It's really nice to have. It's what we call a control card because you're able to use it to quickly get rid of a card you don't want on your enemy side of the board. It gives you more control. Also, if you're afraid one of your cards might die, you just use this card to boost it by 6 points. Also, of course, you need dominance in this sort of deck, so boosting your own card by 6 points might be needed to get the biggest card on the board. Now it's time to get to the bronze cards in this deck. Most of them will be Wild Hunt cards. The first one is the Wild Hunt Bruiser. The Wild Hunt Bruiser is a Wild Hunt card, so you preferably always want to play this on the opposite row of Frost, so you get that 1 extra point from your leader ability. Now, this card can move an enemy to the other row. If you move a card into a row that has Frost, it will damage it by 2 points. So let's say you've put Frost on your opponent's melee row. You will then click on a card that's in the range row and move it into the melee row, damaging it by 2 points. You can of course move any card you'd like, but if you want to do 2 points of damage, that's how you do it. So I have 2 of these cards in this deck because movement is a pretty strong archetype. Next we have the Wild Hunt Rider. This is another card that allows us to thin the deck. If you have dominance, this card will summon the other copy of this unit from your deck to this row. So you always want one of these cards in your hand and one in the deck. If you have the biggest card on your side of the board, or if you or the opponent have not played a card yet and you're the first person to go, you can play this card because it will be the biggest card on the board and will pull out the other card from your deck, thus playing for 8 points and thinning the deck. A really nice card to have. Next we have Naglfar's Crew. This is also a Wild Hunt card. Now on deploy, you will spawn Frost for 2 turns on an enemy row. That's 4 points of damage altogether. At the end of your turn, if there is Frost on the opposite row, this card will boost itself by 1. So you always want to play this card opposite the row you spawn Frost to. Also, if you continue to give Frost to that same row with other cards, this card will keep boosting itself by 1, making it a pretty nice engine. I also have 2 of those cards in this deck. Next up, we have the Iron Owl Conquerors. You will get 2 of these cards in your reward book. So, this card is pretty nice. It's a solid 7 points for 4 provisions. It has Veil, again, protecting you from things like bleeding, locks, poisons. Now, it says on deploy that it will destroy itself. Do not fear. If you have Devotion, which we do, this will cancel the deploy ability. So be careful. If you're going to change cards in this deck, make sure you don't add any card that's not a monster card. If it's red, it's a monster card. If this part is brown, it's a neutral card, and you're gonna play this card and it's just going to die. Most people make this mistake at least once, but don't worry, with this deck you're just guaranteed 7 points, nothing's gonna happen, alright? So you're gonna have 2 of these cards in your deck. Now, this is a pretty chunky card. In fact, it's your biggest bronze card you're gonna get. So that's why I included a Ghoul in this deck. A Ghoul is not a Wild Hunt card, but if you play it on the melee row, it will consume a bronze unit in your graveyard. So this is very much like Ozrael, which I already showed you, except this card can only eat bronze cards, it has to be played in the melee row, and it can only eat your cards. So it's the same rule. Normally you're going to try and play your Iron Owl Conqueror in the first or in the second round. That's so that this card can go to your graveyard. Once it is in your graveyard, you can then eat it with Ghoul. Ghoul will then get 1 plus 7 points, giving it 8 points, which is a lot of points. So altogether, a Ghoul can eat a Conqueror, giving it 8 points, but you can also eat other bronze cards if you perhaps miss your Conqueror. You can eat a Wild Hunt Bruiser for 5 points. You can eat a 4-point Nagelfar's Taskmaster. You do have other options at your disposal. Next up, we have Nagelfar's Taskmaster. On deploy, this card will purify an enemy unit. If you have dominance, you can purify any unit. So instead of just purifying an enemy card, you can also purify your own card. So why would we need to purify an enemy unit? Well, if they have a defender and you want to get rid of the defender, an easy way to do that is to purify the defender. Purify is quite nice to have, and that's why you want to include at least 1 purify card in most of your decks. Now, the fact that you can purify your own card is really cool, because a lot of the time some of your cards might get locked and they won't do what they normally do. So purifying that card will take the lock away. Now, remember, veiled cards are protected from these sort of statuses, but purifying a card is always a nice option to have. Lastly, we have the Wild Hunt Hound. This is also a Wild Hunt card. If you have the biggest card on your side of the board, at the end of every turn you have, this card will boost itself by 1. So this is just a nice little engine to have. It will keep on growing as long as you have the biggest card on your side of the board. Alright, and that is your Monsters starter deck. Now, here's some advice. If you're playing a deck that has a lot of cards that are engines, meaning they do what they do every single turn, and they grow stronger and stronger the longer the round goes, that means your deck is favored in a long round. You have a lot of frost options to your disposal. So if you have frost on your enemy's side of the board, and you have a card like Eridan doing his thing, that means the frost will do damage by 3 points instead of 2. The longer you can keep this card on the board, the more damage it will do. So what does this tell us? This tells us that our deck is favored in a long round. So how do we abuse this? And how do other players abuse our engine deck? Well, this means that getting round control is important. Round control means you're in control of the rounds. You get this by winning round 1. If you are able to win round 1, you can dry pass in round 2, meaning you don't have to play any cards, you just pass and you go directly into a long round 3. You're very favored in a long round 3 because you can play as much frost as you possibly can on your opponent's side of the board, and you can put up all of your engines that will keep on growing the longer the round goes. Now, that is your main strategy. Win round 1, pass round 2, go into a long round 3, win the game. You also have the option of going into a short round 3 if you have no choice. And you can do that because you have what we call a point slam card. A point slam card is going to give you a lot of points in a short round. I have specifically put in 2 point slam cards in this deck. It's always nice to have the option if you need to. So let's say you accidentally end up in a short round 3 and you have to win this without being able to play loads of frost and loads of engines. So the point slam cards we put in this deck is of course Ozrael. If you play this correctly, Ozrael will play for 14 points. That's a lot of points that your opponent might not be able to beat in a short round. We also have the option of playing our Ghoul. A Ghoul will give us 8 points at most, which is a lot of points in a short round. If you have to make do, remember there are always other options at your disposal. Perhaps you haven't drawn Igern yet, so you can still play Igern for 13 points. He might just die more easily because he'll only have like 2 armor, and if your opponent is able to take his 2 armor away, he dies. You also have Oberon King, which in its third form will not only give you Oberon the Conqueror, you'll also be able to play a Wild Hunt unit. Now remember, the Wild Hunt units you'll be able to choose from will be cards like the Wild Hunt Bruiser, the Wild Hunt Rider, or even cards like the INL Conqueror or Nagafast Taskmaster. So that's also a lot of points slam in a short turn. I hope I made this clear enough for you if you are a beginner. I will now show you a game I played in the lower ranks around rank 20 to show you how this deck works. I will then show you a game I played in pro rank just to show you that this deck will remain viable even if you climb all the way to pro rank. It's a pretty strong deck, and with minor adjustments this can beat the meta in a lot of seasons. I hope it helps, and I hope you enjoy the deck. Alright, I feel like this is the perfect matchup to showcase this deck in the lower ranks, because I have popularized vampires by now, and I feel like making a little counter deck could be nice. Okay, so what do we want to start off with? Firstly, we want to get rid of one of these Wild Hunt Riders because they're thin, so we only need one in hand. Next up, I want to get rid of Osrel because he consumes something from the graveyard. There's nothing in the graveyard yet, so I want to get rid of him for now. The same goes for Ghoul. We have nothing in the graveyard, so Ghoul gets mulliganed as well. I see we're a blue coin, that's perfectly fine. So because we already have the biggest card on the board, I'm going to start off with our Wild Hunt Riders and pull the other one out. So that's pretty nice. As you can see already, we have 14 cards in our deck, whereas our opponent has 15. That increases our chances of drawing the cards we want later down the line. Okay, so we're starting with a little Brixa Vampire, that's fine. Now what makes this deck so cool against vampires is the fact that we have veiled units. We'll play this one here. So, as you can see, the Aperian Phantom has Veil here at the side. That means it can't get any status. Bleeding is a sort of status. So if they target my Veiled card, nothing will happen to it. And that's pretty great against this sort of matchup. Okay, that's not a good play, but it's okay, I guess. For now, I'm going to play the INL Conqueror, another Veil card. As you can see, I'm playing them all in the same row on purpose. That's because if my opponent is going to play Crimson Curse, which targets a whole row, it has a chance of hitting my Veiled cards, and then the bleeding will go to waste. Also, I want to put this in my graveyard for now, so that we can consume this INL Conqueror at 7 points later down the line. So playing it in round 1 is kind of important. Alright, okay, so we have Dominance, which is great. I can make use of Dominance, and I can, if I'd like, play something like a Wild Hunt Hound. This will grow every turn because it has Dominance. I'm going to give my Wild Hunt Rider a boost. As you can see, we already have 2 engines on the board. That's because they keep on ticking and growing larger the longer the round goes on. We're pretty strong. Oh, there it is, Crimson Curse. That's what I'm talking about. Now see, what is it gonna hit? It's going to hit a random card on this row every turn and give it bleeding. Because I have 2 Veiled cards, there's 50% chance that it goes to waste. Oh, look at that. It just went onto my Conqueror, completely wasted. Now I'm going to make their life just a little bit harder, and I'm going to play another Conqueror on the melee row. Because this card is going to die, that means that there's now a 75% chance that the bleeding will go wasted every turn. As you can see, I haven't committed my leader yet, because it's kind of important to keep your leader. Again, it went to waste. That's pretty cool. Now, I think something we could afford to do here is probably play another Wild Hunt Hound. I don't feel like going too deep into this round, but I want them to commit a little bit of their better cards, so I'm going to play one more. Now we have 3 engines on the board. It's not looking too bad for us. We're also ahead by quite a few points. Katakan is a nice commitment. That's what I'm talking about. Getting that out now is good for us. Alright, so we're going to get 3 points in the next turn. And they are going to get 2 points. I am prepared to commit my Adastriga because we still have dominance. We have 9 points on the board while they have 8. I'm going to use Adastriga to get rid of this engine. This is a pretty strong engine. Well, okay, well, it's not that strong. It's a 1-point engine. The Garkin gets 1 point every turn. I don't like that, so I'm going to get rid of it. Nekurat, alright. Now, as you can see, this is a melee row card, meaning it has to be played in the melee row. Because I don't want that in the melee row, I'm gonna move it. I'm getting a tiny bit worried about where we stand, so I'm going to use 1 leader charge to move this into the range row. That's what makes our leaders so nice. You have some nice control options. Now they can't use the Nekurats anymore. Next up, I'm going to play my Wild Hunt Bruiser in the range row, so it gets boosted by 1 point because we've got Frost in the range row. And then I'm going to move this card, because it's the biggest, into the range row. And I think that is it for now. So when you use the Wild Hunt Bruiser, moving a card into a Frost row, it gets damaged by 2 points. Obviously, the Frost also damages the highest unit on the board by 2. So that means we will have dominance for a lot longer now that their biggest card is being damaged. And they pass. Alright. That means we pass 2, and we take the round. Great stuff. Alright, so having round control is great for us. It means we can now decide whether we want to play cards in round 2 or whether we want to go for a long round 3. So, we have Ardgaeth here, which is pretty nice. Ooh, we also have Gales. That's amazing for us. Okay. Now, normally I would always tell you to go for a long round, don't get me wrong, but right now our graveyard's biggest card is a 7, and Ozra is therefore going to get 8 points, which isn't ideal. Instead, I'm going to play our old Spear Tip Solong. So I'm going to put this on the board, and this is going to go to the graveyard next turn, and I'm going to try and eat it with Ozra. Keep in mind, we are a card down right now, so we have to make sure we get out of this round. Okay, next card I'm gonna play is Ardgaeth, our Echo card. We're gonna play this again in the next round. Now, the reason I'm playing this now is because the first time we have Frost on every row, we're going to get the Winter Queen out. There we go. So again, we're thinning our deck. Now we have 10 cards left, and our opponent has 12 cards. This increases our chances of drawing all of these gold cards we want to see later down the line. Also, it's not looking too bad. We've got 13 points on the board right now. Now, this is where we start considering to bleed our opponent, alright? We have a suspicion they might not have such good cards in their hand. So we can either go for a 2-0, or we can keep on pushing and hope we get some better cards. I think they might have some gold cards, and I want to see those come out of their hand and onto the board. Right now it's looking very good. There it is. That's a bleed. I'm getting a gold card from my opponent. One of the strongest gold cards at that. Now, because we still have dominance, I can use Nithral and damage a card by 2 points. Also, I'm gonna use Gales now, because the only card Gales can draw is going to be Naglfar or Artgaiath. Naglfar looks at 2 random gold cards from your deck. You play one, and the other one's placed on top. So, not only am I playing a gold card now, I'm guaranteeing that we get another one in the next round. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm gonna go for the Oberon Invader, and I'm going to get Ozra in my next round. Oberon is going to give me one of these. I suspect I'm gonna go with the Wild Hunt Warrior and damage this by 3. And it's looking pretty good. So this card is damaged all the way down to 1 point now. Now, if we do pass, we now go into a short round 3 with Point Slam. Point Slam refers to my Ghoul, which is going to be playing for 8 points, as well as Ozra, which is going to be playing for 10 points. Because we're in a very good position, I'm going to actually play all of my cards now. I'm going to kill the Unseen Elder. As you can see, Orianna needs to be in the range row. So, I'm going to move her out of the range row, and she's not going to work anymore. Then I'm going to play Ghoul onto the melee row, consume my 7-point card, and that leaves me at 40 points. Not too shabby. So they need to be able to catch up now with the bit of bleeding they have on my side, as well as the last 2 cards left. Chances are they might have Regis, they don't. And there we go, guys. That is Frost. This is a pretty nice starter deck, and I think for the sort of matchups you'll be facing at this sort of rank, Frost seems to do the trick. And yeah, if you want to beat vampires, this is the deck to do it with. I'm so ready to spend 70 keys on Tuesday. Last week I get pro rank watching your vids. Ah, GG. Well done. Oh my. Are we playing against Calculus? Huh. Alright. Concentrate here. You're not playing against beginners anymore. So far so good. I'd say having Ghoul in hand is fine. We are on a red coin, so a bit of overcommitment isn't the end of the world. Perhaps getting rid of 1 Wild Hunt Hound. Nice. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm so confused. This is such an interactive board. It's one of my favorites. Whisper's Tribute. Crimson Curse. Is this a vampire deck? I can't tell. If so, it's very weird looking. It's a vampire deck, okay. I'm working on a heat box for my cat. That's so wholesome. You have to send a photo on you have to send a photo on the Discord when you're done. My cats just use me as a heat blanket, but only in the winter. In the summer they play hard to get, and I need to earn their affection apparently. Nice. Okay, what's next? I'd say Gales for sure. Artgaiath in the deck, Winter Queen. Frost versus vampires. I feel like this is the ultimate test of this deck. Pro rank vampires versus Frost. Though I haven't seen Whisper's Tribute in this deck. I guess it's for extra thinning, which makes sense. So they've got the Wild Hunt Rider, they've got Whisper's Tribute for extra thinning. They played an organic card, which was Crimson Curse, yeah. They've got a weird leader ability to go with this deck. Very weird. Okay, I think it's time for Igern. Oh, look at this row. Beautiful. That's what I'm talking about. Winning on even seems good. So far, so good. He has a dive. Predatory dive. Okay, well, I can technically pass. I'm not going to, though. I probably pass now. I don't know how I feel about passing. When in doubt, don't pass, you know? If you don't know what you're dealing with, it's best not to give them round control. Protefleder. I mean, I can totally just pass. Yep. What are you gonna do, Freno? I'm going to get 1 extra point, putting me on 38, so you need 9 points in one go. Okay. Hey, Raze. I feel happy with this. I mean, they can't bleed me now. They have to go for a long round, which is what I want. And I have last say. I'm pretty happy with this. Only thing I can do now is thin the deck and to try and get the good stuff. I would have to do that by probably getting rid of Conqueror for now. Nice. Very nice. Maybe getting rid of the Bruiser as well. I don't know how I feel about that, but they likely pass, so I'm gonna have to play my Ghoul. Yep. I've played Igern already. I'm gonna have to play Ghoul now. I prefer to play Ghoul now and keep the Bruisers because movement is everything against monsters. It feels bad, but we have to. Hey, True Test. We're playing in Pro Rank now. We're trying out our beginner's deck in Pro Rank, and I'm gonna be very happy if this ends up working. It's also the perfect test match because normally Vampires is dominating the beginner ranks. And here we'll have someone who actually has an optimized Vampire deck. Oh, beautiful. We've got everything we need. Purify is sort of perfect, actually. I would still like a Bruiser, but in exchange for what? I can get one through Oberon. It's fine. Okay, so I will begin by playing Nithral. If they can Parasite it, so be it. Then they can Parasite my other cards as well. Commercial Hippie. Hello. What ranks do you consider high rank besides Pro rank? It really does differ. Oof. Okay, wait. That needs to quickly die. I don't like the fact that they give this another bleeding and it dies, right? Katakan, perfect. Thanks for the sub, Jet Force Juno. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Definitely time for Eridan. Whoop whoop. Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Cheers, Scarface. Have a nice day. Yeah, it has to die. I was thinking about that. The thing is, movement is very important. For Oriana, I might not get movement through. Oberon, I think we're good. Okay, time for Archive. Ping this. It dies. Easy peasy. Hell yeah. It feels so much more rewarding playing in pro rank. I don't know, it's just totally different ball game. Okay, I will do... I'll do this. Oh, my observer probably isn't even on. I wonder, is Gwent Observer working for you guys? Because I just switched accounts, so I'm curious whether you can actually read my cards now. It works. Weird. It stopped working when I switched accounts earlier. Very interesting.
Bring me fisting.
Oh, nice. Nice. Okay, it's gonna have to be Anna Conqueror. Melee row gets boosted. I can see all your cards. Mwahaha. Fleader. Now, do you have Regis, good sir? I never play this when I'm playing it, but I'm playing it. Okay. It works. We got a new starter deck, friends. Build it now. Climb in pro rank. It is all good. Am I going to get a GG? That's the only thing that might differ in pro rank. No GGs anymore for no reason whatsoever. Yes? Yeah. At least in the lower ranks, everybody's so kind.